Oxygen should never be used to sweeten. So oxygen are not used to sweeten the air in a confined space. Where oxygen is used, follow safety advice from the supplier. So if you're using oxygen, you have to follow safety advice from the supplier. Follow the safeguards on the safety data sheet. So you have to follow the safeguards in the safety data sheet. And next is keep the safety data sheet readily available. So it should be readily available, this safety data sheet or sheet. I'm sorry for the word. Be aware of the dangers of oxygen if in doubt. Ask. So you should ask. Prevent oxygen enrichment by ensuring that equipment is sleek, tight, and in good working order. So it should be in good working order, of course. It's very important. Check that ventilation is adequate. So you have to check the ventilation. It should be adequate. Next is always use oxygen cylinders and equipment carefully and correctly. So you have to use cylinders or oxygen cylinders correctly and carefully. You should be careful with that. Always open oxygen cylinder valves slowly, so do not rush things. You have to slowly open it. Do not rush. It will open. Do not smoke where oxygen is being used. Of course, do not smoke if you are using oxygen. Never use replacement parts which not been specifically approved for oxygen service. So you don't have to or never use replacement. Never use oxygen equipment above the pressure certified by the manufacturer. So because there is certain pressures, no, if you are using oxygen, you have or there is pressures. So dito ra jud ka sa give provide na measures or pressure of a certain oxygen. Do not go further. Never use oil or grease to lubricate oxygen equipment. So it is advisable that you should not use oil or grease to lubricate oxygen equipment. So if the oxygen equipment should, there is no greasing, oil put in there for it to lubricate, it is not advisable. Never use oxygen in equipment which is not designed for oxygen service. It is very it was being tackled or read above. Next is operators of locations storing large amounts of oxidizing substances have duties under the control of major accident hazards involving dangerous substances regulations or COMA regulations. So, operators of locations should store large amount of oxidizing substances. That's all. Next is fuel. Workplaces in which large amounts of flammable materials are displayed, stored, or used can represent a greater hazard than those where the amount kept is small. In relation to fire, fuel consists of flammable material. Flammable materials or material that burns readily in a normal atmosphere. Flammable materials include flammable liquids, example petrol, flammable gases, example propane and butane, actually propane and butane, and flammable solids, examples are charcoal, paper. It is important to identify all flammable materials that are in your workplace so that proper controls can be put in place. So these things or this fuel is very commonly known in our society today because we can really see this kind of thing that creates fire within our society, like this petrol, gases like propane and butane, of course, for those who are boarding, especially in students who are boarding, use butane, and actually, we all know that it creates fires. And this pyramid shows the fire prevention pyramid, which is it is being adapted here or can be seen there the heat, fuel, and oxygen that is being tackled above that it can cause fire, and it was being said that there are properties there that will help to minimize or to avoid the spread of fire. In this thing, I'm going to be reading this. Great care is required in the storage, handling, and use of flammable materials. So, great care is being required in the storage. Of course, you have to care for the things that is inside the storage and handling and use of flammable materials. Safety. Data sheets may provide detailed advice. So there are safety sheets or data sheets that will help you provide a detailed advice for a safety and a bountiful working hours. Fuel safeguards. Ensure employees are aware of their responsibility to report dangers. So these fuel safeguards, so it ensures the employers to be aware of what are their responsibility for what are their responsibility to report the dangers that is happening inside a laboratory or inside a kitchen or inside a building. And also, what another fuel safeguards is follow the authorities' advice on LPGs. So LPGs can be found in the kitchen, literally in the kitchen. So you have to follow the authorities or follow the rules or follow the procedures and how to take care or how to take good care of the LPG. Follow the authorities' advice on explosive atmospheres and use the guide to the safety, health, and welfare at work. General application, it is under Regulations 2007, Part 8, which is the explosive atmospheres. So you have to follow if you will be the one or if you will be the employee, you should follow the authorities' advice. And next is use the from underground services. So you have to use the code for you to avoid danger. Use board guys networks safety web page including dial before you dig. So you have to use this. Ensure furnishings and fittings in places of assembly comply with the code of practice for fire safety of furnishings and fittings in places of assembly. Next is permit no timber lining on ceilings, corridor walls, or ceilings or stairways. Only exception is class OMDF. So you have to permit no timber lining. No timber lining should be put on ceilings, corridor walls, or ceilings or in the stairways. Take care of placing notice boards in its routes as any paper on the board could be fuel in the event of a fire. So you have to take care of placing notice. So you have to signage. This is particularly signage. Where there is a possibility of the presence of flammable gas or vapor, conduct a full risk assessment and consider the need for this gas detection equipment. Next is where gas detection equipment is needed, ensure it is properly installed, maintained, and serviced. Next is operators of locations storing larger amounts of substances with flammable or explosive properties have duties under the COMA regulations. Note, you have to note this, that the highly flammable liquid threshold is 10 tons, while hydrogen and acetylene are both at 5 tons. And this is flammable materials. Identify all flammable materials so that proper controls can be put in place. So you have to identify those flammable materials. Next, identify use of substances with flammable vapors, example, some adhesives. Reduce quantities of flammable materials to the smallest amount necessary for running the business and keep away from escape routes. So you have to reduce quantities and you have to keep it away or from the escape area. Replace highly flammable materials with less flammable ones. So you have to replace those risky, those high flammable materials with a less flammable ones. Store remaining stocks of highly flammable materials properly outside. in a separate building or separated from the main workplace by fire resisting construction. Provide clearly marked separate storage for flammable chemicals, gas cylinders, and waste materials. Train employees on safe storage, handling, and use of flammable materials. Keep stocks of office stationery and supplies and flammable cleaners materials in separate cupboards or stores. They should be fire resisting with fire door if they open onto a corridor or stairway escape route. Catering and hospitality premises. See relevant sections of safe hospitality, example sections for 1.13 LPGs or gas safety, 1.5 fire safety, or 6.11 flame alarms. And these are the things that you should consider on preventing the fire. And this is the end of my part, and my partner, Mary Love Longkov, will continue on the tips in how to prevent fire at home, in the industry, in a hotel, in a kitchen laboratory. That's all. Thank you.